Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North East Non-League Show, episode 11, and it's a Durham City AFC special part 2, sponsored by Beer Watch TV, Southern West End, Jade Bell, and proud to support If You Care Share Foundation. Join us tonight. We have Carl Welldale and John Wilberforce. Lads, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Cheers.
Very busy show, this one. Lots wrote down. I can imagine a lot of questions that's going to be coming into the show as well. Just before we kind of start the show, in the questions, like you say, get them in all night. We'll try and get through as many as we can. And if you just kind of help Wilton out, there is a little link in the questions at the moment where you can donate as much as you can, even if it's just a couple of pounds, just to help them get the money back that they rightly deserve, that Durham City owe them. So I think we're above £500 already just after 24 hours. So absolutely great start. And we'll try and get that pushed as much as we can. But just before we get on to the Durham City kind of story and what's been going on the last week or so, just get to know a little bit more about yourselves as well. Carl, what's kind of your story with Durham and how did it all come around?
And initially, I'm a Wellington fan, so obviously there's the ground sharing going on. So as I was watching at Wellington, I was obviously taking interest in Durham as well because you see them there, and the previous secretary Fred Usher was there at Wellington matches when Durham didn't play and things. Yeah, you have that relationship. I think the Wellington chairman often alludes to the Northern League and like non-league generally in the North East being like one big family. And we are, 90 minutes on the pitch, you hate each other and you want to sort of rip each other's heads off and get the goals and win. But once the final whistle goes, we're not always up to the final whistle, depending on how the result went. But generally speaking, behind the scenes, we are a family and we help each other out where you can. And it's the same thing with Durham. So they were obviously had the troubles, pretty well documented. And then there was issues, and they were kind of like everyone quit. So they were kind of like just ambling along, and they needed someone to help and step in. Yeah. So I was kind of on the sidelines and I just offered to try and help out. It was nothing more than kind of just filling out team sheets and getting one match at a time, sort of finished off and then move on to the next one. So I did commit quite a lot of time and also my own personal money as well, really, to like going to home and away games. It's quite a commitment to be an official in any sort of capacity, really. So took the plunge, to the commitment, and helped see them through the end of the season. And that's where that is. And now I'm back with Willow, my spiritual home.
Yeah.
So, secretary there.
Quite an important job as well, them team sheets. I know I filled plenty out in the Peak League, and if you get one of them initials or one of them letters wrong, it's a fight long fine. So quite an important job, isn't it, to make sure you get them right?
Yeah, I mean it's got to be right. Yeah, the I's have got to be dotted and the T's have got to be crossed. And if you don't get it right, there's hell to pay. Dave Robinson in the Northern League will have you guts. So, I try to keep everything right. I didn't really have any problems with the team. It was fairly straightforward. I knew got to know a lot of the lads, and they were kind of like regulars. Sticking in all the time. They really stuck in, and the results weren't always reflective of the performances. If that makes sense, which is a shame. It's. I think the lads deserve it. And they got the just rewards at the end. The final game of the season was almost like a fairy tale end to a disastrous accumulation of bad luck and sort of like bad management, really. But the lads stuck in and they got the result. So it was kind of well deserved, really. It was a good way to finish the season off.
No, definitely. And yourself, John, just a little bit about yourself and your connection with Durham City as well.
It's been briefer. I'm living in the North East now. I've been a secretary before for Bacup Borough in the North West Counties League, but I've been going to a lot of Northern League games for a number of years now. And then they were desperate for a secretary at one point last season. I think someone had left or someone was about to leave, and I volunteered. And I don't regret doing it, frankly. It felt like the right thing to do at the right time. And I'm going to reiterate what Carl said, that whilst Durham City might be, I don't know which, a bit of a car crash at the minute for whatever reason. There are some really well-minded, fundamentally good people behind the scenes there, like Lee and Carl and the players who, I can't believe that for the last however long it's been, they've managed to get a team out successfully, consistently. It's absolutely staggering that they've managed to do that. So there's an awful lot of people there who've shown a huge amount of commitment to keep it alive. My involvement was brief, 9 days, and the reason was because fundamentally I couldn't work with Chris Tanner. I never had the opportunity to speak to Olivier Bernard at any point, but I had plenty of dealings with Chris, and I found that just very difficult. But I wouldn't, like I said a minute ago, I wouldn't want that to detract from the fact that there are a lot of good people at Durham. There were then, and still are. And so whilst there was like an inevitability about what's kind of happened this week, what's gone before that, there was so many times that something could have happened to stop this happening, really, and it just hasn't. So nowadays I'm involved with Redcar Athletic, who are Northern League Division 1 team. I'm a board member there, and I still take an active interest in Durham, still go and see lots of games, still bump into Carl at lots of games, and Lee and people like that. We're still we're still friends, still talk to each other a lot. But yeah, my Redcar Athletic is my club, if you like now. Redcar's where I'm born and bred, and I don't live there anymore. I live in County Durham, but Redcar's where I'm at.
Yeah, excellent. And like you say about the people that are still involved at the club as well, and I think it was quite nice the other day when Save Durham City put the Twitter page on saying get your good stories in, which I added to as well. It was just so nice to see the good old memories and the pictures of the programmes and the team sheets, and just remember I forgot he played for Durham, and there's so many great stories as well. So like you say, if you have got any great Durham stories, any what you'd like to share, put them in the comments. I would love to go through some of them as well, because I loved going through them comments the other day as well. So just kind of going over the last kind of week, which is, to be honest, it's been an absolute crazy week, as always, to be honest. But obviously, the 1st of November, the Suns football, Oscar Paul, and a piece by George Sims as well, Bernard breaks his silence. And that kind of came out, and that was kind of the first time that we really heard anything from Bernard. And we had, obviously, the 5th of November, Anfield 13, Durham 0, which is just another result on a Saturday, which we kind of expected now. And then the 7th of November, it was quite an interesting one, because I was through at Newcastle on the night, and there was a tweet came out about the football club is defined by its people, its fans, its kind of players. But the club owner does not fault the captain. I said straight away to replay that kind of played for Durham, Ian Davison, who was with us at the time, and he kind of said that doesn't sound quite good. I said, yeah, I think something could be happening. And as you say, kind of early hours, and the next morning, the club statement, FA and Wearside League Durham had withdrawn. Zenith Sport. Bernard kind of said this, Alex kind of said that. It's been backwards and forwards really on Twitter, hasn't it, the last kind of few days? I mean, start with yourself, John. Okay, what's the last 7 days kind of looked at to yourself?
Oh, God. Well, notwithstanding the fact that I'm in a holiday cottage in North Wales, I'm trying
to relax.
I'm on holiday with a friend, Thomas, and it's so. I mean, my phone started going within a couple of minutes. Like you, I saw that initial tweet and thought immediately something's going to happen here, and then just a series of messages about that. I mean, so much of the next few minutes of whatever I say and whatever Carl says there might be some speculation attached to it. It looks to me as though Olivier Bernard and Chris Tanner have had a fallout. I don't know what the context of that is, or who has instigated the fallout, or who's walked away. Both, obviously, Chris Tanner's saying he's resigned from the position. Olivier Bernard's saying he's got rid of him. Don't know which is the truth. And then there's the issue about them resigning from the league, and I suppose the issue there is, if it was Chris that resigned from the league, did he have the power to do that? If he did, then the Wearside League are in a really difficult position, because obviously then he's not involved with the club anymore. Olivier Bernard owns the club to all intents and purposes, and therefore he's going to try and sort of rescue that situation somehow. I don't know how, and I don't know whether the Wearside League are going to look on that favourably or not. Again, I suppose, going back to my initial point, I just feel sorry for. I feel sorry for anybody who's playing for Durham at the minute, because they're, especially if they're young players like 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are wanting to play competitive football, and this is their first experience of pyramid football. It must be absolutely soul-destroying. I mean, but as soon as I read this, my first thought was about Willington, if I'm honest. It wasn't about Durham, because I think Durham, I read Mike Amos or someone else had said the other day that, it was Olivier Bernard. All of Durham's old supporters support other teams now, and I think there's an element of truth to that. Not all of them, but most of them. But I immediately thought of Willington because they're, you know, a fundamentally well-minded, fair club who've done nothing but look out for their neighbours and try to do the right thing to keep their neighbours playing football. And they are likely, or it might be the case, that they're going to be the unwitting victims in this more than anybody, really.
Yeah.
And I suppose while I'm talking about that, I think, you know, without wanting to be overly controversial, I think the Northern League and the Wearside League and the Durham FA have got an awful lot of soul searching to do about this, because this has been the worst kept secret in non-league football in the North East. That this has been going on for 8 or 10 months now. This has been going on. Everybody's known about it. It's been the topic of every conversation that one secretary has with another or one supporter has with another. Everyone's known that this debt has existed, and Durham have been playing loose and fast with the rules, so to speak, around paying things and what have you. And so there's been lots of opportunity for something to be done about this. And for whatever reason, Durham FA, especially Durham FA, have chosen to kind of wash their hands of it. And that seems fundamentally unfair to me, especially, you know, yes, Carl and I are friends, but Carl's also the secretary of a Northern League club who are now going to be impacted negatively by what's gone on. And it's not their fault. They've done everything that they could. You know, Chris Tanner can say what he likes about, oh, invoices weren't laid out properly or whatever. There might be truth in it. It might be absolute nonsense. But what he knows is he owes the money. They owed the money, and Willington have got themselves into that situation by trying to be a good neighbour, and that's fundamentally unfair. That.
Yeah, and yourself, Carl. I mean, like you say, going on to some of what John just mentioned there, especially now running the Secretary job at Willington, it must be hard, obviously, with them funds and kind of seeing, obviously, a great win at the week last week, but obviously the season that you've had, that money could have went towards a little bit of a budget for players and stuff like that, couldn't it? It could have been huge for Willington.
Yeah, I mean, we were relying on that money to actually cover another debt that we have.
Right.
So to try and sort of cover some of that, we have had to dip into a sort of normal player fund, sort of like player budget, as you call it.
Yeah.
So it is kind of, usually have a little bit of breathing space, but it's kind of, when I was talking to Lee the other day, it's almost like week to week now, you know, and it's not quite that serious as in, oh, week to week we're going to go bust, you know, it's not that serious, but it's just like, you know, money in, money out, and we just kind of having to watch the pennies of it, and it just makes things a little bit tighter. That's all. It's not ideal, but I think the money's been owed for a while, so it's not like it's just been plucked out of our hands.
Yeah.
And we've kind of sort of, part of us has resigned ourselves, thinking we're probably not going to see it for, you know, a long while if we ever do. And then to go back to like the invoice side of it, it just seems to be just time wasting from Tannery. I mean, really, it was nothing to do with him. He's like involved himself in things that it was never an issue before that. You know, we had several seasons, after speaking to Lee, several seasons where invoices were always passed on, and the system that was in place and was agreed, there was never any issue with it.
Yeah.
The only time the issue seemed to arise was when Zenith popped onto the scene. That's when things started to fall apart. Not just regarding invoices, but you could see with the committee side of it. You know, they come on claim to save the club, but then the entire committee quits. You know, and then you go through 4 or 5 secretaries in the space of 4 months. You know, these are not coincidentals. You know, there's a standard theme. You know, there's a contributing factor that seems to be at play throughout all of this, and it was the introduction of sort of Tanner and Zenith. You know, it's sad, really. But
it's hard, isn't it? Like you say, especially, I mean, over even just this last week for Wilton on Twitter and Facebook, like the firework night, that looked absolutely amazing. The amount of support that you've got down, the soup kind of the kitchen that you're doing as well, and just all this good stuff. It's a great club. And it's just a shame, like you say, it is a family environment, and the Northern League all trying to help each other out. And hopefully it will be dealt with, and hopefully, as you say, that we have got that in the comments. Please do get across the GoFundMe page if you can, to help out as much as we can. I know we were speaking to Lee yesterday. He was absolutely amazed when I emailed to say, look, we're going to push it as much as we can. We've got it all over Twitter, Facebook, and what a start we've had as well. So hopefully we can hit that 2,500 for you. We really can help as much as we can there, Carl, as well.
Can I just come back on something quickly, Rainey, if you don't mind? I don't want to, like I said, I don't want this to turn into a sort of beating somebody up online session or something like that. But the amount of effort that Northern League clubs and Wearside League clubs, but Northern League clubs especially, put in to trying to maintain relationships with their fans and other clubs in the area. You know, I don't know of clubs that have enemies as other clubs. Redcar Athletic are absolute firm friends with Redcar Town and Mask and Thornaby and Billingham Synthonia and all that sort of thing. All the Teesside clubs kind of get together. The amount of damage that Chris Tanner's done in terms of the relationships with other non-league clubs, Northern League clubs, through his antics online has been immeasurable. And again, there's there has to be, and again, it's been the worst kept secret in non-league football. That really, everyone's known that that's going on. And again, for whatever reason, nobody's felt able to do anything about it at a league level or as at an administrative level or something like that. And those bridges that have taken years to build are completely burnt through now for whoever does come in. If anybody is able to take on Durham now going forward, the amount of work they're going to have to do to rebuild relationships with Willington and Burley and teams like that is absolutely enormous. There's a huge amount of damage that's been done. So whilst I am, cross about what Olivier Bernard's done, at the very least, he's not gone out of his way to offend people in the way that Chris Tanner has.
I think to add on to that, John, as well, when you say about the relationships and that, I mean, I was just speaking to Lee, obviously the Willington chairman, earlier tonight, and he was saying, despite everything, nobody wants to see Durham go to the wall. We still there's a lot of, it's a very beloved club. There's still a lot of love out there for it. And you think about sort of not just the old nostalgic history surrounding one of the older established non-league clubs. You think more about the recent history as well, when it was Unibond Premier League. I think when I was at school, the Unibond Premier League, it was Bishop Auckland was in there and Durham was in there. I went to school at King James, which was next door to the Kingsway ground at Bishop Auckland. So I used to follow all that sort of local non-league football. Even from a kid, and you see Durham City there, and you remember that's the town, that's the city you would go to on a Saturday shopping with my nana and things like that. It's like there is a lot of sort of love there, and when it was riding high and it was looking like it was really kicking on, and then things happened that was out of people's control regarding artificial services and whatnot, and then it just seemed to spiral downwards after that. It's very, very, very sad. But despite everything and the money that's owed and that, even put that to one side, even Lee was saying, we don't want to see Durham go, and there's still a part of us saying if there's a new regime comes in and all, he gets some people together quickly to try and fix it, Willington would still very much like to have a sort of friendly relationship with Durham and try and help them where we can. We're not spitefully saying you owe us money, that's it. Go to the wall, we don't care about you. Of course we care. We're a Northern League club. Willington have been in difficult positions over the years. You Google Willington AFC and look on some of the Northern Echo archives. There was times in the 80s and 90s where the padlocks were nearly put on the gate. Willington's nearly gone to the wall as well. So we've been there as well, and it's peaks and troughs. And I think if we're quite willing to show some solidarity with Durham, but it's got to be on the right terms. And I just think relationships became very strained when trying to deal with, and even behind the scenes when the money was owed, he's very arrogant and gets very contentious with things. It's very, very difficult to deal with someone who behaves the way he does. I mean, you see how he behaves publicly on a public forum with an official club account before he locked it to the public. But behind the scenes, he's 10 times worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's great just to hear that. Like you say, he's still offering the support, which is absolutely amazing as well. Just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's watching now. We're hitting 30 plus. We really appreciate your support. Like we say, we're looking to do as much as we can on the channel to help as many clubs as we can in the Northern League. So keep subscribing. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe. It would really mean it's a lot to us. We're going to go through a couple of comments now. Unfortunately, we've had to ban a couple. Obviously, Zen of Sports and Event Management was putting in plenty comments. There's bad language and that we just don't need on the live stream, to be honest. So that's gone. But Thomas just mentioned there, hi lads, just feel sorry for Willow. Hopefully we can pay the bill, pay to move on the football club from this mess. Yeah, like you say, hopefully we can. I don't know. I know the last time I did check, I think it was on about £500, but I know I've put a few more links out, so hopefully we'll get that to £1,000 by the end of the week as well. Marty, I can't grasp what people say Ollie Bernard owes Durham. As like you say, there's nothing actually to own, which is hit the nail on the head, isn't it? And up the Mariners, Mr. Star, so I'll watch back later. Thank you for all the shares as well on Twitter as well. Up the Mariners, really appreciate that as well. So just getting back to the Durham City story now. So with Chris Tanner's statements, obviously when it comes out, I will go through the whole thing, but I'll be here all now. So at night, sorry. So I've picked out some points that I've what I looked at this morning. So on the Tuesday, 8th of November, myself and partners of Zenith decided to terminate our relationship with Bernard and Durham City. Took over via agreement with Bernard, not a previous board. £10,000 was brought into the club. It had 2 social teams, 2 junior teams, 1 women team, and a private academy. Taking to come on board in 2023 season. Plans for Leyburn Grove, but also return to Ferrens Park. Bernard, a lot of messages about Bernard, no interest in helping out at all. Lots of lies from Bernard. All players released, management resigned and withdrawn from the league and advised to the FA. So that was kind of the key points I've picked out of the statement on there. Carl, what did you make of the statement that was released by Tanner?
I think from my dealings with Chris, it's just typical of the sort of thing he comes out with. He's don't get us wrong. I mean, initially I got on with him quite well. The relationship it kind of suited us. I worked all day, and then he was in bed all day because he's 10,000 miles away. And then by the time I was ready to do some football stuff, it was like 9 o'clock. I have a teams meeting. It just kind of fit well for my lifestyle at the time. And I think I alluded something similar when I had an interview with Nova Radio. Did something like that. It was the same sort of concept. I was like, it just kind of worked out. I was doing my thing. I was very sort of green to it all. You know, it was all very new. I'd never been a secretary before. I didn't know what was involved.
Yeah.
So I would, and then, you know, I didn't know who this Tanner guy was. He just seemed like he knew what he was talking about. He very clever. He would say the right things and things that would make sense. So I think a lot of people get a little bit hoodwinked by it all, thinking, oh, he's talking about junior teams. Well, that's a good idea. Of course, it's a good idea. I could say it for Wellington, oh, we're going to have some junior teams, and everyone look and say, oh, well, that's a good idea. But saying and doing are 2 different things. And it just seemed like he was saying things, but with no real substance to back it up. You know, I mean, we started off, there was this block of land. He was obsessed with a block of land in Durham, known locally as Mullards.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Phillips factory used to be. It's just a stone's throw away from
Used to do cross country around that. No good memories there.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to get it into his head that the council had gifted this land to Durham, and all we had to do was develop it. And then he had this idea that he was going to turn it into a George Campbell Academy, because he was kind of obsessed with George Campbell as a former Durham player. So he liked to ride on the back of other people's successes, and it's just like I had to look over, and then I looked into it more, and obviously once I'd left, I even got some more research on it, and all the groundwork on that bit of land had been done sort of years previous, but it was a no-go. I mean, the costs that it was going to cost to develop that, he just thinks, you can just put a couple of containers on there you go, you've got a bit of land, just need someone to sign it over. But it was just, you know, the logistics of it all, he just couldn't grasp. Because he's 10,000 miles away, he's not on the ground. He can't see what's going on. There was all sorts. So I was speaking to people that were involved in that, and I think a figure of something around £1.5 million or something to get the land off the council, and it'd have to be developed, and there would be the road networks would have to be changed to get access to it, and there'd be a car park would need to be built, and the pitch would need to, because there's a pitch there currently, because it's a detached playing field for Belmont Comprehensive School. So you'd have to get it off them, and then they would need some access to it for extracurricular or renting out for as a sports pitch, because they do rent out sport pitches currently.
Yeah.
You would have to angle the pitch slightly to try and reduce the likelihood of any sort of stray footballs going onto the A1, because it's right adjacent to the A1. So there's all sorts involved in that. And land in Durham City is at a premium anyway. If you can get a bit of land, you can make a fortune just building a bunch of student flats, and that happens all the time. It's still happening in Durham. There isn't really an appetite for building another football pitch within 100 yards of where there already is a current football pitch. So the costs were just ridiculously, but he was obsessed with it. He thought it was a viable option. It's like, you give him that bit of land, he wouldn't know what to do with it. It'd be like a dog chasing a car, and then when the car stops, it just, doesn't know what to do with it. Just, he just seemed to get onto these little like delusional fantasies of what he could do. It's good to dream, you think you've got the dream, but you've got to, but I do it all the time at Willington. I sit there with, an endless checkbook thinking, I could build this stand here, and I could do this, I could extend the club out. And by the time I finished, me and Lee have spent like £2.5 million, and think, we still haven't finished. You know what I mean? But it's just nice to sort of project like, but it's not real. It's not realistic to do things like that. So that's the sort of thing he was looking at. So that from that statement, it was just more nonsense, really, and just pie in the sky. That he comes up with, just plucks figures out the air that sound good, and I don't know. I just had me full of him by the end. So I mean, his relationship broke down towards the end. It just got ridiculous. I was arguing with him all the time on Teams meetings. I just as I grew into a role of, or what I feel like I grew into a role of being a secretary. You start to realize what's needed and what I needed to do, and I need to do this, I need that. But everything had to be his way. He had to, almost like a megalomaniac, he had to control everything. To the point of he was trying to micromanage the petty cash tin from Australia. It's just ridiculous. Absolute crazy to try and start managing 60 or 70 quid from Australia, telling me how to spend it on training. I've got to bank it so that then he can pay £22 for an hour's training at Belmont. It was just nonsense, and I thought, this is just unsustainable. You cannot be doing this. It's... No, I was just mad.
Yeah, crazy times, isn't it? And what was your thoughts on it, John, as well?
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, I read his statement, and I listened to your interview with him as well, Rainey, and I just, I sort of listened to it, and all I could think was that, it was like a wish list, like Carl's just described. It's a wish list of what you would want to do at a sort of reasonably well-adjusted non-league club. You'd want to have a women's team. You'd want to have a junior setup. You'd want all of those things. Absolutely fine. You'd want to have a ground that you were investing in. You'd want to have links with other community organisations. But it was all, I'm afraid, make-believe. There's no substance behind any of it. Absolutely none. I mean, you've got to ask, at the end of the day, there isn't a junior setup. There isn't a women's team. Yeah. They are sharing a ground again. And there was no prospect of them not sharing a ground at the moment. One of my first dealings with Tanner was, I'd love to have this conversation with him again. I really would. He said, I asked him about, very early in our relationship, I asked him about the ground for next year, meaning this season. And he said to me, the hub in Sunderland, and it's all sorted. It's all arranged, and it's confirmed. And I asked him because... Sean Heap, who was one of the coaches at the time, had asked me, and other players were asking as well, because they wanted to know where they were likely to be playing. Yeah,
exactly.
And it was nonsense. There was no arrangement with the hub. The hub wouldn't even look at an application for the following season until the end of May. And I was having this conversation with him where he was saying it was all done in March. And it was fantasy. And it put me in a position where I was either going to have to sort of have that out with him or lie to coaches and players. And that from my perspective, was a very early straw that broke the camel's back for me. I thought, I'm not prepared to lie to people about it. It's not fair. But that was actually, just as Carl's just said, it's kind of symptomatic of the way he is. I think there's a lot of good ideas, and he's very convincing and he's very plausible. But you've only got to scratch the surface and it all falls apart instantly. There's nothing there. There's no substance behind any of it. And what you've actually got in reality, unfortunately, especially for Durham City supporters, is a club who've won one game in nearly 4 years.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And at the moment, haven't even got a league place. And it's got that way I can't say it wasn't already heading in that direction before Chris Tanner came along, but my God, it's got worse. And at least they still had relationships with their neighbours at that point, and now they haven't even got that.
Yeah, it is. It's a crazy situation. A couple of comments coming there as well. Save Durham. Everything he said from day one had no substance. The playing side got worse on and off the field. You can't imagine why anyone would want to get involved with such a toxic club. Thomas just mentioned there, the crazy Chris said for me that he was going to develop 2 grounds when nobody was even going to the games anywhere as well. I know it was quite strange, obviously, trying to develop 1 ground, but obviously still want to go to Friends Park. It was kind of battles and falls between that. Nathan, thanks for watching, Nathan. Coming on next week as well. It's refreshing to hear the same thing spoken of in 2018 when I had Bruce Bill as assistant manager. Is the same stuff that's being spouted now. There was and still is a lot of great people at Durham. Yeah, especially like I say, I've just been saying earlier on the show, the amount of people on Twitter that's been putting all the stories in about the old Durham kind of squads and the programs has been fantastic. If you have got any Durham stories, anyone that's watching, get them on. We'd love to get them read out as well. Up the Mariners, he was a bit of a Walter Mitty, like Nathan as well. Refreshing as in any form of guilt attached to the start of the demise can be wiped. We were removed from post in 17th place, 10 games of the season with no budget. And Sean, he mentioned there, Zenith damage is done. Oliver needs to come out with a clear, sensible, achievable plan to re-engage with the fan base going forward with Durham in whatever shape it is. Yeah, so it's going to be a massive couple of weeks now. The next step, it's going to be crucial to kind of say what is going to happen going forward. Now, same again, if you want, keep getting them comments in. We'll try and go through them as many as we can as well. Do appreciate your support and watching as well. Carl is getting back to the Wilton as well, and obviously the bill. Do you think will ever get paid?
I'd like to think it does, or would. Unfortunately, I mean, there's that much going on now with Durham itself. I think we've got a meeting with the Wearside League tomorrow scheduled for now. That's obviously got to take precedence in Olivia's mind now to try and see if there's a club that can be sort of rescued and see what it can pull together and hopefully give the Wearside League some reassurances that perhaps the resignation doesn't have to be accepted, because I don't think it's been accepted yet. I don't know, me and John were just talking about this earlier. They said they received the resignation. I'm not sure Tanner should have done that. It very much feels, when we talk about it, very much feels like, although he says he's quit or Zenith resigned, to me, if that was a conscious decision from Zenith, then you would just walk away from it and hand over the control, all the social media access. You would just hand it back, say, here you go, Olivier, have it back. We're not having any more part of it. Whereas I'd be more inclined to believe that Olivier's pulled the plug and he's gone off like a spoilt child, and he's basically pulled the pin on a hand grenade and chucked it into the Wearside League. There you go. Have a bit of that. I'm running off with the Twitter account now, and I'm gonna start being like a petulant child and not hand it back. I'm not handing the toys back. It just seems very spiteful, and it's not very classy at all, is it?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Like you say, hopefully we'll see what happens over the next couple of days with the meeting tomorrow as well. I know both of you have obviously the work that you're trying to help Wilton as well. Can you just tell us a bit more about this, what you're trying to do together to help Wilton?
Do you want me to? I don't mind.
Yeah, go on, John.
Yeah, we had a conversation about a week ago about it. Just before I come on holiday, we had a thought about trying to put some of the money in ourselves to get it paid, because at the moment Willington are the disadvantaged party here through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
And if they're in a situation where the club are in either jeopardy or certainly being very significantly disadvantaged by it, that's not fair. So the idea we had was to try and raise the money as quickly as possible and pay it to Willington, and then in inverted commas go after Durham for it, either through, well, what we've done is we've written to them and asked them to sign a promissory note to commit to paying it back over a period of time. So effectively they're going to get an interest-free loan from us to pay it off so that Willington get the money, and then we'll try and raise the money back afterwards. It's not fair on Willington what's going on at the minute.
Definitely not.
I don't know if I believe that Olivier can't afford to pay this. I mean, I know he's got other business interests. I also know that footballers didn't earn anything like as much back then as they do these days. But it's £2,500. And you were talking before, Carl, about having a patch of land that might be worth £1 million or £1.5 million and invested all these sorts of things in junior teams and women's teams and all that sort of thing. If you're talking about doing any of those things, surely you can afford to pay £2,000 to your neighbours because you owe them the money, and you've owed them the money for nearly a year. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, I can even remember having a conversation, I think it was with you, Carl, where he was talking about repaying a social media guy who did some tweeting for him and repaying 50 or 60 quid that he owed to him in instalments. And I'm like, nonsense, absolute nonsense. If we were struggling, the club was struggling to pay the training at Sedgefield School or Sedgefield College, £100 or something like that. And even that was getting chased up and what have you. I'm not sure I believe they can't afford to pay it. But even if they can't afford to pay it, there's a commitment to pay so much a month. And the plan is that whatever doesn't get raised through this GoFundMe, which is fantastic, and I'm really grateful, and I know Carl and Lee are as well, for all the money that is raised, we'll try and get this repaid by Olivia Bernard or Chris Tanner, whoever is the appropriate person to pay it, because it needs done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything add to that, Carl, as well?
No, I mean that John's pretty much summed it up there. We just trying every angle just to try and get it cleared, really. So, Durham, it's a debt that's on Durham's back, and this was like a monkey on their back, and then obviously we've got some bills that need to be paid, so that'd be a monkey off our back, and then try and get like an amicable agreement, and then if something's in place, it's not an issue. We wouldn't even be talking about it if things were being paid regularly. Just like a bank doesn't complain if you've got a bank loan or your credit card. If you're paying your credit cards every month, they don't chase you for the money, do they?
Yeah, exactly.
The same sort of thing. It's when you miss payments and you're not paying it, or you're underpaying, and that's when they start getting a bit tetchy over it. We're not asking for things that we aren't owed. And that was actually, I don't actually have any sort of ill will towards Ollie Bernard either. I've met him a couple of times. I know John said he never got the opportunity. I've met him a few times. He's a thoroughly decent guy. Like, when you speak to him, he's really nice, but very relaxed and laid back, which is probably a bit of a fault, really. It's if anything, it sounds a little bit silly, but it's in this sort of thing, you probably need to be a little bit more harsh or a little bit more sort of driven. But I think there's a number of things. I think he feels wrong that, obviously I can't speak on his behalf, but I just get the impression that he feels let down by various different quarters, and I think he's been a little bit naive on things, and it's unfortunate because he is a nice guy, he's but ultimately he's responsible for putting Zenith in charge, even on other people's recommendations. Just like the owner of any business, if you're the owner, you've got to sort of live and die by your decisions, and it's what it is. I think he's just kind of trusted the wrong people, and it's coming back to bite him, which is unfortunate. Yeah,
massively. We kind of move on to what is next for Durham, and I mean, like I say, hopefully something will get turned out, because I've went to watch Durham City for many years. Until they left New Friends Park, and I absolutely love going down. Met some great people. I know we mentioned on the last show Stevie Hicks, obviously living in Sherburn where I did as well, and he was absolute legend for that club. And just some of the players that they had. I know we've had a few players on that's done interviews for the channel, the likes of Rasher and players like that, and just talk about the memories and the promotions that they had. It's a real special club with a lot of history. And I mean, that just kind of brings you on to takeovers as well. I know when Rasher was on, he kind of mentioned, I think they're in Division 2 at the time. And he said that himself and a couple of other people put a good amount of money into Bernard and said, we would like to take over the club and try and get it back to where it was. And that was rejected at the time. Have you heard of any other takeovers that's been on within the last decade or anything between you?
I haven't personally.
Just rumours. I mean, you hear people saying, somebody's heard somebody's put something in. And I think somebody else offered to get a consortium together and offer something. But I mean, it's still hearsay. I haven't heard anything sort of concrete as such. But I think I've kind of got a foot in both camps with an opinion on where Durham go next. I've got like my heart is like, for the old nostalgia, and it's Durham City, and there's a lot. Like, I look back to like all the love that's there for it, and the memories, and it's all in living memory as well. And there's a lot of local people who are still very much involved in football, who played for Durham or they supported Durham, and there is still a lot of sort of fondness there for them. And my heart is telling like you can't let a club go to the wall like that. You kind of just watch it wither away and die. Something's got to be done. But on the flip side of that is like you try to put your sort of pragmatic head on, and you think, well, imagine somebody did take over the club, and Oliver now just says, look, there's a club to, somebody pick up the ball and run with it, so to speak. It's like, where do you go? It's still got the same problems that it doesn't have a ground to play on. It hasn't got anything to bring to the table other than sort of recent successes, like history within sort of like, was it back-to-back promotions or something and got up to its highest level, and it's got that sort of brand awareness, which has been somewhat tarnished of late, because of the Zenith and Mr. Tanner, but that can be repaired. But it's still kind of like, well, where's it going to go? Where's it going to fit in at Durham? Because it's now Durham City have been playing outside of Durham for about seven years now or something, is it?
That's the main problem, isn't it? Yeah.
It hasn't been in Durham. It's got almost an entire generation of sort of youth and fans there that it's potentially lost, and you've got that void is now being filled. There's a whole handful of clubs there. You're talking. Corinthians are probably one of the most senior ones now that's sort of progressing quite well. That play at New Ferns Park. You've got was it Durham United now? We've done a deal with the university that play down Maiden Castle now, so they'll be looking to sort of probably emulate something like Newcastle University in the Northern League as well, and try and do that and have that university link. And then sort of if you go down the pecking order, then and you've got some really well run sort of local clubs in like Belmont United, who have a lot to do with a lot of the kids where my kids go to school.
Yeah, it's really good.
Belmont United hats and scarves and jackets and things, and they've got that real sort of community feel to them. And I was speaking to one of their sort of committee members this afternoon on the playground, and so they're quite happy to continue as they are. And like people suggest, well, maybe do a deal with them or merge with them. I think, yeah, but where's the motivation for someone like Belmont or DNS Valley or New Durham AFC? Where's the motivation for them to merge with someone? Whereas maybe it's a couple of seasons ago, you're saying, well, it's a straight path into the Northern League. You've got access to a Northern League ground, albeit a ground sharing one. But you've got this youth set up. You could do the deal there and have this sort of that clear pathway, that progression side of it. But that's all gone now. It's the Wearside League still possibly. Who knows? After tomorrow's meeting, you haven't really got anything to offer, and it's sad. It really is.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? A couple of comments coming in there as well, just saying this point fielder should be critical. Must, but the worry is he will have people come in and out and able to continue and stumble along. As I say, things just not changing. Like you just said there, Carl Thomas, exactly the same. The problem that we've got now is there's kind of 6 other teams with the Durham name. I know I said it kind of on the first show. Back in the day, it was always just Durham City. There might have been 1 or 2 possibly kind of sniffing around, but now you've just got Durham this, Durham that, and there's that many clubs now, that many players going to that. I always said if you just had that one Durham team and the amount of people in Durham, you get a good side, you could easily climb the leagues with a decent side, a decent settle. But I think it's obviously far too late for that. And our Blackford watched Durham United at Maiden Castle a few weeks back against Durham Griffins, at least 100 people in attendance. Both teams having fans, young and old. As Carl said, a generation of fans lost as well. Yeah, great setup down Maiden Castle now. It's lovely down there as well. So just a couple of questions for you both about, obviously, one at a time, about going through the statement, Bernard and Tanner. Starting with yourself, John, obviously Bernard has said that he did not want to leave the league. It was Zenith. Do you think they will get back in? Do you think it has just been put on hold until that meeting tomorrow?
I think we might disagree about this, Carl and I. I'm not sure. I think they're done. I think they're done. They've taken their fixtures and the results off the website, and they're out of the league table. I think the Wearside League are probably looking at this at the moment thinking, do we really want that sort of drama attached to a league which, hasn't even got a sponsor at the moment and all that sort of thing? It's it's not a great setup anyway. But having Durham City AFC attached to you at the moment is toxic. Carl was talking a minute ago about what is Durham City. It's a reputation, or it's a history and stuff like that. But that reputation at the moment is toxic, and that brand awareness at the moment is toxic as well. And so, why would a Belmont or someone like that want to be attached to them? It's the last thing you'd want is to be attached to something with that sort of reputation at the moment. So, I personally think if the Wearside League have got the opportunity to wash their hands of this at the moment, then they'll probably take it. I've got no science behind that, and I've not got any skin in the game, or I don't know anyone who's there or anything like that. It's just a gut feel. I think they'll want rid.
Yeah. And a question for yourself, Carl. Zenith said that all players are now released to go and find yourself a new club. If they get back in the league, obviously, where do they find a new squad? But most importantly, because I know I've been involved in teams where I've been to league meetings where teams have fell out the league, and all the players have had to then pay any outstanding debt or fines before they can go and play for other clubs. So say, for example, Durham don't get back in that league. Durham have say, well, the money is owed to Willerton. You owe money for this, owe money for that. And the players will want to go and sign for a club. Is that going to stop play as well? I always remember that happened to Sunday League sides. I don't know if it's the same on a Saturday. I mean, what's your thoughts on the lads that's kind of left this club? And obviously, do you think they will get another squad just like that if they do get back in the league?
Well, initially, I don't think the Wellington debt would be attached to the club anyway. When they try to chase it through sort of like FA channel, we have approached sort of like the FA and
right.
Things.
Yeah.
And they've said it's a private debt between you two. Go through the debt recovery scheme, and I've been through that. And I was like, that's different. That's for like when players or clubs' money. Clubs can say, well, you run away with your kit, you can't play, you get sanctioned, and you sin died or whatever, and you're not allowed to play till you've handed your kit back in. That sort of thing. That's what it seems set up for, not this sort of private, almost like a private agreement debt. So that wouldn't be attached, but that ultimately was one of the driving forces as to why I sort of stepped in, because I saw a good bunch of lads there last season. I thought, I know the Northern League, I think if a club folds mid-season, I think it's about $2,000. I'm sure it's about $2,000 fine for folding mid-season. It's nowhere near as much as that in the Wearside League. It's a lot less. I think it may, I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe it might only be 700 or 800 quid, something like that. So it's not a great deal. It does get levied, as far as I'm aware, against anybody that's registered with the club. So, but it isn't split evenly. I mean, somebody with more knowledge might correct us, because I could be completely wrong. It's just what I've kind of picked up the bones of, and it's like, so if all 20 players left, and the Wearside League applied an £800 fine to the club and the club didn't pay it, if one of them players would say, well, I want to go and register and play for Corinthians or Wearside or whatever, they would then be levied with that full £800. And then if another player wanted to go and play for someone else, no, that £800 has to be paid. So it just follows whoever around for the full amount. So unless somebody all gets together and they do it sort of unofficially and all chip in 20 quid or whatever until they reach the 800. But it's really sort of weird how it's applied sometimes. Or that's my understanding of it. Like I said, I could be wrong. But as John said, I kind of disagree with what he thinks will happen. I think the Wearside League is a little bit more lenient than what maybe higher up leagues would be. I know I spoke to Peter Maguire and Kev Harris, and I had a meeting with them about resigning the league before we even started, because I saw the writing was on the wall, and I was like, "This, I cannot." In my heart of hearts, I can't facilitate the very thing that I stepped in to stop last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I thought if I want to step in to stop a club from folding and applying levies to players who they're just young lads who just want to play football. You know, they don't want to get involved in the politics behind the scenes of it all. So there's like two sides to the football. I said there's the football side, and then there's like the admin side, and that's all where all the politics goes on. And I saw myself as stepping in to prevent that, so the lads could just play football. And I felt like I succeeded. It was difficult, stressful at times, but I succeeded. Yeah. But then to carry on as secretary for the beginning of this season, even making my senior debut in a friendly, it was horrific. It really was.
Well, I believe it was more like Baggio, I've heard. I thought you were like Baggio.
I think my man can body couldn't cash. But it was just one of them things, and it was like, this is just bad. I thought, you know, we can't start a season like this. Otherwise, we're just going to be in the same position where the club's going to fold mid-season. It's not going to continue. And I thought there was a chance, but when the pre-season results were coming in, and they were getting hammered, you know, and that was off a new development league, Wearside League 3 club in DNS Valley. And I know Craig Fawn at DNS, and he's a top guy. He's got a lovely bunch of lads there, you know, dead hungry, young, enthusiastic lads, and they just taught us a new one. You know, it was taught Durham a new one. It was like, this is horrific. This is not. And then it just got worse after I'd left. You know, there was match abandoned against Bishop Reserves. It just wasn't good. And so I had a meeting with Peter Maguire, the chairman, and Kev Harrison, the secretary of the Wearside League. I said, look, as secretary, I says, do I have the authority to resign the league here? Or I said, I really don't think we can start. Mm-hmm. He says, well, as the sole sort of contact, yes, you know, you're the official, you're the contact. Right. Yeah. Yes, you do have the power. We'd prefer you to sort of consult and do with the chairman and agree to do it together. He said, but we would take your word. So I had a very difficult decision to make. I was like,
I bet.
Do I want to be that? Do I want to be that man that's going to put myself in the position, do the right thing for the lads involved, but then possibly be sort of slated and take all the flack for it? Because I know if I'd done that, Tanner would have come out all guns blazing, and he would have thrown me under the bus, something rotten, and it would have been all my fault. And he was going to save the club, and I ruined it, and it would have been me in the firing line. And I think I just couldn't do that. You know, I thought so. I had to walk away. I ended up falling out with that. That's when it came to a head. When he told me that I'm just the secretary, I'm there to do as he tells us, and I'm like, that's not right. So he's put himself in some position as chairman, thinking that's like the overlord of football. And I thought, well, that's the wrong position. You're not in charge of anything. I mean, if anything, it's the secretary is sort of the engine room of a non-league club doing all the admin and things. It's very difficult position to be in, and even Pete Maguire commented on that team's meeting, says, I can see in your eyes, it's like paining you to talk about it. And it was a really difficult decision to make, you know, and it wasn't even my club. You know, I'd say Wellington's my club, but
that's it, isn't it?
You still have this fondness, and for any sort of Northern League club, you know, like Durham, you know, and there is a lot of love there still for it. And it's just, it's very difficult, you know, to make them decisions. And ultimately, I think I was proven right that it would have been the right thing to do. But if I'd done it then, nobody would have known. You know, it'd have been like, well, would it have carried on? Would it have got better? Zenith promised it would, because he said all the right things. And, you know, I would have been the bad guy in it all. And it's, you know, it was difficult, very difficult decision to make.
It's massive on his shoulders, definitely. Huge on his shoulders. Cracking comment coming in there, Me Machine 1908. I'm currently a player at Durham and still know quite a few of us are still willing to play and hope to complete the season. I know the results haven't been anywhere near good enough, but would like to continue better than the club die, which I think it's absolutely fantastic. Like I say, I know a lot of young lads there at the moment, isn't it? I know a couple of my friends have played, and
I think a lot of the lads will. But it's ultimately it's going to be up to what Bernard can pull out of the bag when he has his meeting. Yeah, I think In contrast to what John said, I think the Wayside League will be sympathetic, and if Bernard can get something together and replace Zenith and get someone in place who's going to do something and say, look, we'll hold it together, get the end of the season, we'll see the season out, and put some promises and assurances in place that are viable. I think the Wayside League would be receptive to that. I think they're a little bit more lenient. And I think they would go for it. And I still think a lot of players there will want to play. And again, the results might not be great. As Mean Machine sort of says there, and, they might not be good enough. But I think, if the results are bad, the results are bad. I think what you want to see is 11 lads and plus subs just trying. If you're trying and leaving everything on the pitch, I think people appreciate that more. If they're not trying, obviously, you get sick of your football team. You see these prima donnas in the Premier League, but if you're putting lads in, putting graft in, if they're not of the same quality, if that you can't attract the top players, well, then that's fair enough. You are what you are, but that's not an excuse for not trying. I mean, I wasn't very good when I came on as a 10-minute sub, but I tried. I made two tackles. I definitely made 2 tackles. In my mind, I was going to skip through and score a corker in the top corner, but in reality, I barely got the ball. It was very difficult. It did bring it home. It was a very humbling experience to say some of these lads. It's not as easy as it looks. And I probably even in my prime, I don't think I would have competed with a lot of them lads either.
No, great that. But a few more comments coming there. Like I say, a lot of respect to Mean Machine for that comment he's put in as well. Cheesy Waffles FC, only £800. I know Wilton's been helping out a lot lately with the charity events up there for Cheesy Waffles as well. Absolutely fantastic between them as well. Save Durham, I would agree with Carl. I think they'll get back in. I've had so many messages of people interested in running the club. But in my opinion, Ollie Bernard will make this for his own benefit to maintain a rubbish status as well. Thomas mentioned there kept a clean sheet when he came on that game, Carl. Is that correct?
I think I know.
No.
I think I definitely remember at least 2 goals going in when I was studying the centre circle. I did initially start off at was it right back, but I just couldn't track the lad, the Danes Valley lad. I was like, no, I'm gonna have to swap here. I cannot catch him at all. And this lad had been on the pitch for 80 minutes already, and I was fresh legs and I couldn't catch him at all. So I was like, no, I'm gonna have to go centre midfield and try to be a bit more sort of Kevin Ball-esque and just stand in the centre and shout at people or something. But no, it was. I think it was about 9-0, 9 or 10-0 when I come on. I think they lose 13-0 in the end, or 12-0 was it? I think even the referee
made a difference. Then you made a difference.
Well, I think I was only marginally better than nobody else being on the pitch at all. Marginally. It's on my CV now. I'm going to put on my CV, semi-professional footballer.
Fantastic. And next question for yourself, George. Just before we get on that as well, there's still 30 plus people watching. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe. It would really mean a lot to ourselves as well. John, question for yourself. Obviously, Tanner did mention building up, obviously, the youth teams and kind of stuff in the community. I mean, going from now, even if Bernard kind of gets them back in the league, how can they build that reputation up now to get back, to get youth clubs and academies set up and that type of thing now going forward?
It's a good question. I mean, it's not rocket science. It starts with some of the stuff that Carl's doing at Willow, and I'm involved in at Redcar Athletic as well, about trying to engage in the community, trying to forge links in and around the streets, around the ground, and trying to get to know people and be a responsible citizen and all that sort of thing. And then, and give people opportunities as well. I mean, by having, teams who are much younger, then you're producing players for yourself later on as well. But it starts, and I really mean this, but it absolutely starts with being a responsible organisation in the first place, and doing the right things and being seen to be doing the right things as well, whether it's soup kitchens and food banks and energy hubs and things like that. But I'm not meaning to get stuck into Tanner again or anything, but conducting yourself properly as a business and as a football.
Exactly.
That's I look at pains me to say this about Newcastle United at the minute, but the way they conduct themselves on social media in the last 12 months has been absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing. When they got taken over by the Saudis, their reputation was pretty toxic.
Yeah,
that was a really high risk thing to do. But look at them now, and all they've done is message positively and get behind the team that they've had. And that's fantastic for them, and that's what good clubs do. Borough have been very good at that over the years. I think we're very good at that at Redcar Athletic. I know Carl's excellent at that at Willow as well, but that's where it's got to start for Durham now. If they are going to do that, if Carl's right, and I hope Carl is right, I hope they do survive in the Wearside League. I'd love to see them finish the season, start next season in Wearside 2 or 3, and start again. I'd love to see that.
Rebuild.
Really rebuild and come back. But it's got to start with being honest about the problems that they have and the issues that they face, and really distance themselves from everything that's gone before. It wouldn't be the end of the world if I'm aware that I think Chris has still got access to the old social media and all that sort of thing. Let him keep it. Start a new one. Let him keep it, and let him do all the toxic stuff himself and start again. I think that would suit them more.
Definitely. And for yourself, Carl, obviously, big question for this one, but Zenith, Tanner, Bernard, for you, who is kind of from the statements and what you've read, who is kind of telling the truth and who is telling the lies of the last few days?
Well, there's that much being said. I think there was obviously the Sun article, but I've got no time for the Sun at all whatsoever. I think elements of sort of Tanner's Zenith statement is more self-protectionism. I think obviously the writing's been on the wall, and he'll come out and he'll say what needs to be said to paint himself in a good light. So I'm not entirely sure there's a lot there that's truthful. When he's talking about money and things, and it always boils down to money with Tanner. He tries to portray himself as, I bought into the club. Yeah, you bought into the club because you thought you could get a 30% kickback out of it. He bought into the club, did his research, saw the Durham that at its peak when it was getting, I'm told, some of its good sponsors. You're talking 30 grand sponsors. I believe maybe, I don't know, possibly Petchies. Was it SG Petchies? Was maybe 20 or 30 grand sponsor. I don't know. That again, hearsay, but taken on face value, if it was a 30 grand sponsor, 30% kickback, that's what, 9 grand? Cool 9 grand. If he thought he could just say, there's a lot of car dealerships around there. I'll get back to New Friends Park. There's BMW. I'll get myself a 30 grand sponsor, 9 grand for Zenith. Buzzing. And I'm like, it's just not that simple. But in his mind, it was ka-ching. And I just think that was the wrong reasons to be getting involved in a football club. There's more to a club than just what you can get out of it. Yeah, it should be what the club is giving back to the community, and that's the way I see it. And that's why I'm from Willington originally anyway, and the town, obviously, it used to be a colliery town, and there used to be a railway line going through it. And it's not anymore. It's kind of like sort of stuck in a bit of limbo. So there's a lot of the towns, but they don't have much. There's not much there. It's not in a main traffic route. It's kind of just got a bus going through it. You can go to Durham, or you can go to Bishop Auckland, and it's like you're kind of just in limbo there, which is why that fireworks night went off like a real treat. It was like a lot of good positive feedback on that, because we haven't had anything like this. We usually have to go off to Kinrin, or it used to be Akeley Heads, which then's gone off to Beam, and it's like we've got nothing here, and it's like Willington done that, and honestly, it was great. I mean, I was there in an official capacity, but I still enjoyed the fireworks. It was a really good display, and even I was impressed by it. And I was like, hats off to sort of like the team there that did that. But that's what it's all about. It's engaging with that community, and sort of like making them links, and hopefully that community will sort of repay and think, I'll go and take in a football match, and it takes time to build them sort of alliances. Yeah. But I would say that it was probably Bernard pulled the plug. I think he sort of eventually had enough and seen that he wasn't getting the results that he was promised. He was promised a return on investment. Not what he got back, but he was promised something. And it's, again, it was just more words without substance. Promises from time to saying, "Oh, I'll get you this, I'll get you that," and then he's saying, "Oh, sportsmen's dinners." What was in the statement? $4,000 that all he refused to raise $4,000. Yeah. But the numbers don't add up, because he was planning on having it at the bar at New Ferrens, which only holds 70 people, and I'm like, well, even at like a tenner a ticket, you've got to sell all 70 tickets to make £700, but then you've got to start paying for the food and the bar, and it's like, by the time you've took that out, you're going to be looking to clear £400, and that's on a sellout, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not $4,000. You're talking £400. So his numbers don't add up. But even his sort of balance sheet, when I saw his spreadsheet, it was all projected. It was projected numbers, and he would just move numbers about. I was like, well, that's not right. Oh, well, I'll just take away the player budget. Then we want to give the players a tenner for travel or something. Like, I factored in $3,000 for that. Oh, well, I'll just take it away. All of a sudden, I've got a $20,000 player budget. No, you haven't. Well, where are you getting $20,000 from? Just numbers on a spreadsheet. It was just numbers on a spreadsheet. That's all it was. And it was just smoke and mirrors. It's just crazy, lies. Lies. So I'd be inclined to say that it's just like Ollie Bernard's just had the wool pulled over his eyes again. And he's had his fingers burnt again.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? Lee's just mentioned there, Liam McConville, what the club needs is someone with time to get out and repair those relationships. Olivier has said he walked away as he had no time unless he now has. But like you said, Durham has little hope as well. Hope you're doing well, Lee. And Thomas just mentioned that even bullying over YouTube channels when asked difficult questions as well. I know, like you say, the social media, it's been, especially the Twitter account, against people as well. It's just
bullied everyone. Rainey, I mean, you just look at history. He was trying to bully me. He had to go at me. He had a pop about mental health, and then he was calling us a snake. And then I was talking to some of the coaches that he also sacked in the middle of the night. And then in their private meetings, I was getting called a thief, and the previous set was called a thief. And then there was just all sorts of names and mudslinging going on. And I mean, it didn't get to us. You know what I mean? I mean, just like anybody, I have my struggles, and I have days where I'm down, and I do struggle with mental health, just like anybody does. But I always pick myself up and just dust myself down and just crack on. I have bad days, I have good days, but I'm usually all right. But other people might not be as resilient. And for him to behave the way he does, attacking people like that, and I know he had a real go at Dan Bell. I know it was like really sort of scathing of Dan, and I thought he was bang out of order, really, behaving that way against someone who didn't really paint him in a negative light. He just did a factual YouTube video, but because he didn't do what Tanner wanted him to do, all of a sudden, it's just like a relentless bullying tactic on it. It's
absolutely. I've seen some of the messages he sent to Dan. I've seen some of the messages he sent to me.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, if awful thing to say.
I'm not bothered, John. It doesn't bother me.
When you see him, it's awful. I mean, stuff he says is dreadful.
I've always said, if Tanner has a problem, he's more than welcome to get on a plane and fly 10,000 miles and come and see his face to face. I'm not bothered, but he won't. He prefers to do it over social media through his burner account that he claims isn't his, but we know is his because the grammar's the same, the following's the same. It's all Australian content. It's clearly him. You know what I mean? We all, you and I, and everyone knows that it's his burner account, but you can't prove it. So the league don't do anything about it. It's just he just gets away with it because he's a chancer.
Yeah, it's not good at all, is it? I mean, last couple of questions in there as well. Just back to yourself, John. Tanner mentioned obviously plans about Labour and Grove development, but wanting to return to New Ferrens Park. If the club does survive and goes ahead, do you think they ever will return to New Ferrens Park?
Well, my understanding is that it's not fit at the moment. The pitch have been big issues, and I'm aware that Borough Rangers have left and gone back to Stokesley, I think it is.
Yeah.
So even if they wanted to, I'm not sure they could at the minute. But I mean, again, my other understanding is that it's £400 a match to play at New Ferrens, and they're not going to pay.
That's a lot, because honestly, my son plays and it's Saturday morning. The pitch it's more black crumb than it's awful.
Yeah,
absolutely awful.
So I don't see it, and I mean, New Ferrens Park isn't the same as Ferrens Park, is it? I know it's similar-ish, but that's not what the emotional attachment is. I mean, I don't see any particular reason to do it, and they'd be better off being in a smaller facility in Durham itself, perhaps, if they could. I think the idea of developing something themselves is genuinely pie in the sky. I just don't think there's any prospect of that. If they can't pay a couple of £1,000s to Willington, then they're not going to be able to spend the money on developing something else. So I don't see it, unfortunately, and I don't think it would be the right thing for them to do anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Carl, in the statement, we mentioned this, the number one problem was Bernard. Where do you think the main problem lies now with Durham City going forward?
I think it's more business related. I think it's like a clear strategy, because I think once they left, for whatever reason, when they left New Ferrens Park and became sort of travelling hobos, it was like, well, where's the strategy? And I've struggled to understand where the strategy is. I mean, I've currently got probably a box of 50 scarves that somebody knocked up that says, the campaign to bring Durham home, and I'm like, how? I mean, what? How are you going to do that? And if you do, what you got? It was just like it was a good marketing ploy. They obviously still have 50 scarves they didn't sell, but even if they sold 50 scarves, how was that going to get them back to Durham? I just think, what did they do? You need a clear plan. I mean, I was the one that took them to Leyburn Grove, actually, and a lot of people questioned that, and I still stand by that decision, because it was cheaper than one of the hubs and cheaper than going anywhere else, and it was cheaper than actually playing at Willington. The facilities weren't as good at Leyburn Grove, because you haven't got the ground requirements that you need for Northern League, but you've got enough there for Wearside League 1. Slightly closer to Durham than Willington, probably in a more direct route. It just seemed to be a better fit. I mean, they were leaving anyway, like John alluded to. They were already looking at alternatives. But I do feel a little bit guilty that I took Durham away, and then that kind of like lost Willington its leverage to get its money back, or get the money that's owed to it. But ultimately, I was also concerned with, like, Durham need to survive. So I think Leyburn Grove's about £1,600 a year. So it's like two installments of about £800 plus any additional matches. That's like for 20 matches or something. And then the odd ones. And all in all, I don't think it's a bad facility. The pitch is a little bit far away from the clubhouse thing. But if somebody were to come in and buy Leyburn Grove off the council, I think it could be developed into a decent,
it could be. It's a nice place.
A decent facility, but it's going to take money. You would have to have a decent amount of money behind it. It's not ideal. It's not in Durham, and Durham need to be playing in Durham, but unfortunately, there isn't really many options in Durham other than sort of school pitches and
so there's loads, isn't there?
New Ferrens Park is the only game in town, but like John says, it's lost its, I think it's UEFA license, isn't it? So that's the one that starts with the FA pyramid. So that's why it can't be Northern League, but it still has its FA accreditation or pass or whatever it is license. The 3G license, so it's still okay for Wearside League. It still passes all of that. So.
Just pop a couple of comments on there as we've gone through as well.
Just read something to you very quickly.
Definitely.
Someone just sent me a message that Durham have just tweeted. Wilberforce's previous club said he's only good at collecting tins of baked beans and kissing ass. That's that's a measure of the man. I run a food bank at Redcar Athletic,
right.
And that's a measure of the man. He's an absolute dipstick.
Is that tweeted from an account he shouldn't have?
No, it's tweeted from it is tweeted from Durham City AFC.
Wow,
absolutely disgusting. I'll bring it on, sir. If you fancy coming and having a chat anytime you like, I'll happily run food banks to help people in the community. and do, rather than call people stupid names over the internet. He's an absolute idiot.
But this is it, John. I mean, this is what I've said he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand.
No.
You know, he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of nice comments coming in for you there, lads. In fact, for yourself, Frank Richardson, Carl and John, you're a credit to the game. And Carl as well, Joanne DiCarpio, I hope I said that right. Carl is one of the most compromised people in the club. A pleasure to have met him. My question is, do you think there is any possibility that Bernard sells the club, or do you think he's planning on to keep it? I mean, personally, it's going to be this meeting tomorrow. I know there's things in the air, kind of what's going to happen. I just don't see. I'm still 50-50 kind of what's going to happen. I still think they will try and keep it going. Like you say, the players, by the looks of the message that we've had in the comments tonight, that the players are still willing to play. And even if they can just get this season done and trying to get a few months in the summer to try and get the next steps put in place. I mean, just going back to that question, do you think he is planning on selling the club, or do you think he will want to keep it?
Me? Go on, Carl, you go first.
I think he'll keep it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'll sell it. He's had it for a while now. I think he'll try and put something in place to try and keep it in the Wayside League, keep it going. But I still think that there needs to be some sort of clear strategy as to what happens going forward.
Has to be, yeah.
Otherwise, it's just more of the same sort of ambling along, you know, homeless and not knowing what to do. But yeah, I think if you can, certainly short term, if you can get like an emergency committee together who are willing to step in and look like we'll pick up the reins, I've no doubt that the lads will still want to play, because you know, young lads that like football just want to play football, and it's still very much an honour for a lot of lads to say I've played for Durham City. You know, it's so I think that there will still be a draw there for lads to play. And if there's any sort of short-term plans for at least like a rebuild to get back on track, I'm sure a lot of lads will want to be involved in that, and they'll offer the services. Unfortunately, I'm definitely retired now, so I won't be putting my hat in the ring. I won't be playing. I'm sure a lot of the lads will still
be gutted about that, aren't they, Carl? They really are. They're going to be so disappointed.
Well, I feel like the North East missed out on some flair and skill, but never mind.
And finally, question to both you lads, which we'll finish on, is the future. I mean, I know we've kind of read in the statements trying to say there could be a new ownership structure, possibly new Durham City start. And I will mention a couple of comments. I know obviously Chris has mentioned, and he's mentioned myself, I think it was the day or day before, he kind of now says it's a weight off his shoulder, waking up not having to deal with Durham disasters as a happier state of mind, which was two comments that I got from Chris about the situation. Just kind of going forward now, the future of Durham City, John, starting with yourself, with the big meeting tomorrow, can you see things going from now and say the next 5 years plan for the club if they do continue?
I mean, if they do continue, I think it's really hard I just don't think, if Olivier Bernard paid what it's rumoured he paid for the club, he's never going to get that back. It's not worth anything at the moment, because it doesn't have anything. It's no, other than a couple of bags of balls and some shirts and stuff like that. As far as I'm aware, there isn't anything else. There's no ground, there's no assets as such, and there's no particular trading record. I kept reading about Twitter followers and all that sort of thing, but that's not worth anything really.
Yeah.
So I really don't know. I think either he needs to sort of invest in the club and bring in a new version of Zenith to run it on his behalf, who measure up and do, somebody local measure up and do the things they're meant to do, or he needs to let it go. I don't see it succeeding the way it is at the moment at all. I don't think, and he's certainly, there's nothing to sell. He's not going to get his investment back if that's what he wants to do. Yeah.
And yourself, Carl, I mean, what would you say now is the main plan going forward, and obviously the next few seasons as well, if they do keep continuing?
I've said for a while now to a couple of people, certainly I think I've mentioned to like Lee at Willington and just some people in passing. I'm thinking if Olivier isn't willing to invest or hasn't got the amount of money required to invest, I think without your own ground, you kind of giving yourself or starting from a position with a rod up your own back already.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have costs of rent to pay out, and that's something like, you know, Willington doesn't have rent. It has a facility. You know, it's got a ground. And then you can, once you've got your ground, it's an asset. You know, you think, well, what can I do? I'll play on a Saturday, but I've got Sunday through to Friday now, barring a midweek. What can I do with this ground? And you just look and think, oh, well, I can have a fireworks night. We can have a Christmas fair or something. I think we've got planned coming up. We've got other things you can have. You know, I think we've got like that cheesy waffles thing that we do. You know, now we can help them out.
Yeah, very good.
You know, it's all things where you can start. Well, anything like that where you can open the tea hut and open the clubhouse and, you know, generate a few quid. And I know a lot of other clubs are like that. You know, I think Towler, I think their sort of clubhouse is open as a normal sort of bar through the week. You know, that generates money. I think the clubhouse of Brandon, they've got like band nights and things on during the week.
That's really picking up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's actually like a cousin of mine, so I helped run that as well at Brandon. And there's other clubs as well. You know, you see a lot of clubs that are sort of have their own ground, have their own facilities. You know, they're able to kick on from that. But without it, I think it's a bit difficult. I think we've seen that with sort of like Billingham St. Thorny since they've like moved away from what was their sort of ICI ground. It's been a bit of a struggle for them. You know, and they were in some issues last season when their main sponsor pulled out. So if you've got a good sponsor, that helps. But without that, it's easy to just all of a sudden be on shaky ground. You know, if things don't quite pan out, you know, it's not easy at the best of times, but to be starting without that and having to sort of rent everywhere, it's an outlay that you probably don't want and don't need initially. So I've always said, ideally, in a perfect world, what Durham needs is either somebody with influence or money, or influence and money, to come in who can just say, well, I know someone. He's a bit of land. You know, go back to this block of land. You know, he is some land somewhere, whether it's a bit of brownfield site somewhere to develop. Maybe it's not on this side of Durham, because I'm on the Belmont side. Maybe somewhere over at Fram. You know, there might be an industrial estate somewhere, or maybe there's a deal to be had with New College Durham. You know, they've got loads of playing fields there. You know, would they be involved in something that it's trying to have that sort of influence and networking connections to be able to persuade people to think, oh, we'll do that and sell it to them, and you know, there's something for them then. You know, but we'll get the grants and we'll develop. You'll start off at the bottom and we'll start off and we'll rebuild from nothing. You know, but you just give us the pitch as a nominal, I don't know, £1 a year fee or something, and then we'll develop it for you, and you know, bit by bit and long-term strategy, a long-term plan. I think it would be possible to rebuild it, but whether that's tangible or doable is another question, isn't it?
It is definitely. Like Dave's mentioned there, I'm correct that the only thing owns is the Durham City name. I know kind of when he took over the club, I think the plans was kind of take it up the leagues as quick as they can and get a link up with Newcastle United and then possibly make the money from it. And like you said, with the downfall now, expecting to sell it. I mean, there's been lots of talk that he just hopes to sell it for £1 just to get it off his hands and put it somewhere else, which you see in the professional game, which people laugh about, but that could be the way forward, hopefully, to save the club as well. I mean, just before we end the show, John and Carl, obviously, we've gone through so much that we've kind of, a few comments have come in. Is there anything else that you would like to add on to what we've kind of talked about tonight before we end the show on there? Just is anything that we have missed?
I'll say that, I mean, perhaps Bernard needs a chance. Maybe Olivier Bernard has had his eye hugely off the ball for the last 12 months, maybe longer than that. And maybe this is an opportunity for him to do the right thing and run the club in the right way, either by himself or through himself or through others. And maybe he has been naive, very, very, very naive, but naive nonetheless. And that wouldn't be the end of the world if that was the case. So more than anything, I hope Willington get paid at the moment. And then the other thing is, I just think, just said in a message to someone, the Northern League and the Wearside League will be a better place without Chris Tanner, because that sort of negativity and slanderous, toxic behaviour has got no place in non-league football. The idea, I'll say this, the idea of him being responsible for junior teams with the way he conducts himself on social media disgusts me. The idea that he could even think about doing something like that and have a responsibility for people's children is rotten. So the Northern League scene and the Wearside League scene is better off without him.
Yeah. And yourself, Carl, anything else you want to add on to the show that we've done?
I don't think that. I mean, it's kind of grown legs, this show. I mean, you'd invite us on, and then I thought, well, we'll have it sort of the other side, and then it kind of just blew up in between, didn't it? So
yeah,
I feel a little bit
crazy, isn't it?
Underqualified to be speaking on behalf of Durham. There's probably a million more people there who's more qualified and more involved with Durham, other than just little old me who just helped potter around for the end of the season and then kind of just left. But no, not really. I just think it's just very, very solemn and sort of like sombre for Durham at the minute. I generally hope they get sorted one way or another, because it's never nice losing the club, I don't think.
Yeah. Definitely. Last couple of comments just to read out there. Matthew Hollyoak, I think Durham City manager at the moment. I have at least half a squad of players who would desperately want to carry on this season. Tomorrow I'll have made a decision and advise them how we'll proceed after the meeting is done. Stability is key. Matthew, honestly, we wish you the best of luck. Absolutely. I mean, it must have been so hard getting the group of players in, trying to keep them. I mean, I don't know what the relationship's been between yourself and obviously the board, Chris Tanner and stuff like that as well. But honestly, I'll take my hat off to you with the job that you've tried to do to keep them players coming in week out with the score results as well. So honestly, we wish you the best of luck if you do keep that going as well. And there's a comment just came before that, which I think it's a great way to end the show. Dominic Aberdeen, being from Durham, it's absolutely truly heartbreaking watching this all unravel. And that's kind of just hit the nail on the head. It really is kind of watching it. It's like a drama playing out on Twitter, which it shouldn't be. And like you say, the club with a great history. I mean, myself used to go down and watch them play as well. It's awful just seeing the situation at the end at the moment as well. So I think all eyes will be on the meeting tomorrow, and obviously, hopefully, get, like as you said, John, get a new social media, get set up, a Facebook page, a proper website, and just get some proper good stuff on there, which we want to see, rather than kind of the slagging off matches, saying this and saying that. That's the new route that they need to take, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody can't behave themselves properly, then just ignore it and get on and get somebody else to do it. That's what it needs. There's nothing but respect for, is it Matthew a moment ago, the manager? He's done incredibly well to keep a team of players turning up when they probably know they're going to get beat an awful lot and things like that. And I've got nothing but respect for especially those lads that I think it was 10 or 11 of them went over to Windscale. This is that is the arse end of Cumbria. It's a long way, and huge respect to them. I didn't think they'd get a team to go over there in the first place, and I've got nothing but respect for the people who've been doing that. I just feel they've been let down by those above them, and it's really sad, really is. So, I mean, fantastic respect to people who've done that.
Yeah, hopefully, never know, it might be a few weeks' time, even a few months' time, we'll have Matthew on, hopefully speaking about the first win of the season. That would absolutely fantastic, really would. But again, just before we go, a massive shout out to our sponsors, Baywatch TV, Sun and West End, Jade Bell, and again, proud to support If You Care Share Foundation as well. But before we go, John, Carl, honestly, thank you so much for tonight. I really appreciate your time. I know it's quite late now, so really appreciate his coming on as well.
20 to 11, I'm missing news night. Come on.
And again, everyone that's watching, honestly, thank you so much. It's been 30 plus all night, so I really appreciate your support. If you haven't already, please check out the channel. Lots of Newcastle content, non-league stuff, former players, current players, managers, chairmans coming on all the time now. I know we had last week Bishop Portland and Ashington on. Fantastic. That's how you run a club. Absolutely fantastic. Two great guys. Lots more interviews coming up as well. If you're just new to the channel, please hit that subscribe as well. And we've got to end on it as well. If you can, if you've been watching, if you're watching back at any point, please go back to that first comment. There is a GoFundMe page that is set up for Wilton to try and get this money back. Hit £500 and above that now. So absolutely thank you so much for everybody that's donated so far. And we will hit the target. I'll say this on live now. We will hit that target for Wilton, for everyone that's involved for that football club as well. So thank you so much. for everyone as well. But again, thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your night as well.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone. Are we done?
Nearly.